Okay. Yeah, thank you. Uh, okay. So, before I start this presentation, I would like to talk about myself a bit. I'm Mary Grygjeanne Grace Icay-Diaz, but please call me Grace. That's quite a long name, and I'm from Yaraku Incorporated. And I guess what brought on this topic to for me was like my company contacting third-party pen testing company in order to kind of bolster our team's security testing and make sure that our app is secure for our users. And another thing was that are people familiar with uh, was it Windows Recall, the new app that they just released recently? I guess maybe. That was a huge security red flag for a lot of people in the cybersecurity community because it takes snapshots of your screen for every 5 seconds, and it has the capability to kind of record all your password inputs. And a security researcher actually found that they did not properly encrypt the data, and some of the data were encoded in plain text. So that's why they are called that feature. And I guess that brings us back to my topic for today, which is security testing and why it is important in the not just testing, but development overall. So according to research done by IBM, which is the IBM Security Costs of Data Breach Report last 2022, data breach costs averaged 4.35 million US dollars, which represented over a 3% increase from 2021 and a record high for the past 17 years that the cost of this data breach report has been published. And aside from that, it usually takes 277 days on average to identify and contain a breach, according to the same report. So 200 days to identify and then 70 days to contain that kind of breach. So I guess the next step is how can we better ensure that our organization is protected and all of its products from these kinds of threats? So let me introduce you to the CIA triad. CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So the CIA triad itself is a model used by the cybersecurity information field, and it represents these three core principles that involves different efforts in the in the SDLC, I mean, on how to interact with data. So confidentiality, first of all, involves the efforts of the organization to make sure that data is kept secret or private. Then integrity would involve making sure that your data is trustworthy and free from tampering. So there are three things to consider to make sure that your data has integrity, which are its authenticity, its accuracy, and its reliability. And lastly, its availability. So systems, networks, and applications must be functioning as they should and when they should. So it doesn't have to be available at all times, but it should be available when users need it. And then after considering all of this, how do we make sure that the CIA triad is followed in our organization? So a thing to consider is doing security audits. It could be internally, it could be through a third party. It's best to do a third party so that there's no bias, but I urge you to start doing it internally first and assess the security posture of your organization. So what are all these terms? First of all, security posture is kind of different from security compliance, because security compliance is the measures that our organization puts in place to meet contractual or regulatory requirements, such as like security policies. Some of these are laws that are applicable to different countries, while security posture is kind of a broader term, which refers to the protective measures an organization puts in place to protect its assets, data, and customers. So this is more on, so security compliance, I mean, is more on following rules set by specific security frameworks, while security posture is about an organization's overall ability to protect itself against outside threats. So next here, I'm not sure if everyone can see this, but this is a flow chart of measuring your organization's security posture, the maturity of your organization's security posture, I mean. So there are other frameworks available online, but this is just an example. So kind of just a brief overview of how you can see if your security posture needs to be improved, if it's quite average, or it already has a strong security posture. So actually, one of the popular frameworks that I found related to security posture is the OWASP SAM, SAMM, which stands for Software Assurance Maturity Model. So OWASP, first of all, is an independent nonprofit organization for security, and they made this SAMM as an open framework designed to help organizations formulate and implement a strategy for a software security that is tailored to the specific risks of facing the organization. So it covers all of the business functions from governance, design, implementation, verification, and operations, and also has different security practices under each of these business functions. So this is the next slide. We'll talk about the types of security testing, but this is not an exhaustive list of types of security testing. Just be aware. The first is vulnerability scanning, which identifies known vulnerabilities in the system against applications and networks by comparing them against a database of known security flaws. So two types of tools that you can use for vulnerability scanning would be software composition analysis, or SCA, and static application security testing, or SAS tools. So these are kind of interlinked tools, but they're not the same. Software composition analysis assesses the vulnerability of dependencies of the software, so kind of like third-party dependencies, while the SaaS application security testing is kind of like a white box testing of checking if secure features, a code is implemented securely throughout the application. And this is kind of, well, not all SaaS tools are SCA tools, but there's some like Snyk, that's SNYK, which packages these two. Most of the SaaS tools are just like static analysis tools. They don't really check for the dependencies, but it's best to look for a combination of these two if you're going to use one for your organization. And the next point is penetration testing. Penetration testing is kind of as I mentioned earlier, what started all of this. So it includes a lot of manual testing by pretending to be somewhat of like a hacker trying to get into a system by exploiting vulnerabilities in the system. But there's actually a tool that some penetration testers use called DAST, which is Dynamic Application Security Testing tool, which is more of like a black box testing method that is meant to access the application source code while examining it from kind of outside of the code. So that's kind of vague. I don't really have an example at the moment, but let me get back to you with that. And lastly, there is application security testing. So I guess this is more self-explanatory in in such sense that it encompasses two of the biggest types of applications that we are currently using, which are web applications and mobile applications. So web browsers, mobile browsers are included in web application security testing, while mobile applications kind of just focus more on like native mobile apps. So we're almost at our last slide. So just some more best practices that I wanted to talk about when it comes to security. First of all is plan thoroughly. So it would be great if the organization could develop a comprehensive security testing strategy that aligns with the organization's objectives and risk profile. So this is just pertaining to the organization's business objectives and risk profile if they're averse to risk or if they're more willing to take on risks, is what I mean. And second point is automate where possible. So utilize security testing tools and frameworks to automate repetitive tasks and improve efficiency. So we all know that human employees are the strongest assets of our companies, and yet they are also the most vulnerable when it comes to threats such as social engineering and negligence. This doesn't mean that we have to completely remove humans, because just as I said, they're a company's greatest resource, but as much as possible where we can remove kind of any space for human error, we should try to automate that. Third point is collaborate across teams. So it's best to foster collaboration between security, development, and operations teams to address identified vulnerabilities effectively. Some teams like to make their own like incident management team. It differs for every organization, but there is no end-all be-all solution for every organization, but whatever fits your organization best, you should move toward that process. And lastly is continuous improvement. So it's always best to regularly review and update your security testing practices to keep pace with evolving threats and technology changes. So it's, like I mentioned earlier, it's good to have internal security audits, and maybe if you're interested, I'll check some cybersecurity newsletters, be informed in the latest technology trends, and you don't have to know everything, but it helps to know something. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if you have a question, please send us a question. Okay. First, we got one question. Functional test or security testing?
Sorry, can you please repeat that?
Functional testing or security testing?
That's it. That's a question.
Yes.
Wait, that's so big.
I asked the question, sorry, Grace. So I know it's a little bit ambiguous, but I just want you to compare these two, because personally, I don't know too much about security testing. So which one do you like most, or which one do you find more difficult, or which one you find the feature of testing? So in general, if you want to compare these two, what do you want to say?
So I would say functional testing is important for users, the end user, because you're basically testing what they're going to see in their apps, what they're going to use. While security testing, it's more of like, I would say it's an underrated type of testing. I found it really interesting because not a lot of people had been focusing on this, and yet there's a lot of issues that we would see online. Like, for example, recently there's been like a ton of like there's been a surge in AI recently, right? And along with that comes a lot of like very no I wouldn't say malicious, but not great minded people who kind of want to take advantage over other people with the use of these AI tools. So as of now, I think with the way technology is leaning more towards kind of having more vulnerabilities as AI becomes bigger, as more things become more digitized. I guess security testing will be an even bigger field soon enough.
Thank you so much. And we got 3 questions. How did you start practicing security testing?
So I took the Cybersecurity Foundations course in Coursera by Google. There's a bunch of other courses there, such as by InfoSec and by IBM, but I think if you don't have much knowledge about the IT industry in general, it would be good to start with like the Google cybersecurity certification.
Okay. So have you ever encountered a situation where a company is using AI and you need to do additional security testing because of it? If you can, please give an example.
Oh, we, oh yeah, I think I can talk about this because we've already introduced it. So we have started introducing ChatGPT into our platform as a translation tool, or as a machine translation engine, I mean. And there are some security measures that a development team has already put in, but I thought as you know, we can do prompt injection with ChatGPT. It's possible to kind of get some source code throughout that. So far, I was able to get kind of some unclean responses, kind of like not completely the source code, but like some weird symbols instead of answers. But that was about it. I guess the development team did pretty good with kind of like adding guardrails into the application.
Thank you. And then last question. What's your perspective of using prescriptive model as OSAMM versus using a descriptive one as BSIMM? How do you adapt OSAMM to your company's needs?
I guess this would really depend on what your company prefers. If there's already some measures in place, then it would be best to go with that. But at the moment, we don't really have that kind of method. So I thought it was safer to go with the SAMM route. My bad. But it has its kind of what's the term? It has its cons as well, since it's a pretty prescriptive kind of framework. It's kind of hard to follow that, but I haven't really tried other ones as well, so I think it would do them injustice to kind of just compare them like that. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. So here's your LinkedIn. Please, everyone, please follow her and add on LinkedIn. Okay, so we have a break time now.